which is considered to be a boat parked on a land. All right. That is a hospital, a vessel and dye dock area known as a maternity ward, the place where they have all these little glass window boxes where they place the babies behind a window, and you get to view all the babies that have been given born or born to in the delivery room at the hospital. All the babies that are sleeping in behind that glass, they are not. They're waiting for their doctor to handle the paperwork known as a birth certificate. Okay. Now, what is a birth certificate? I'll explain momentarily, but first we need to know one thing. We need to know that when a ship comes into this country and docks and starts to unload cars and TVs from Japan, whenever a ship is carrying and delivering goods into our borders, the captain of the ship, he has to get off the boat and he has to hand something called a certificate of manifest, because yesterday the ship has not appeared or manifest at the dock or in the port. It has not yet manifested at port, but the ship is here. It was birthed this morning, and so the items on board that are being delivered have manifested today. So the captain, he gives a certificate of manifest, hands it over to the court authorities, and it lists and accounts for all the items, all the TVs, all the clothes from China, all the chemicals, all the metal. It lists basically a receipt is what it lists. It's a transaction paper. Now, the definition of a certificate. Okay, a certificates in the Webster's Dictionary defines it as a paper that denotes an ownership claim. So a receipt is a paper which lists a record of transaction of ownership. That's why receipts have a little line at the bottom where your name is supposed to be signed, to signify that the ownership of the item has changed hands. Now, there are two laws that govern the world. You have the laws of the sea, and it's known as the Masonic pillar of the sea, and the laws of the land, the Masonic pillar of land. All right, and so we have the laws of water and the laws of land. All right, and above them is this entire Masonic shipping platform that has morphed into a postal. It used to be a postal warfare platform, strictly warfare over material goods that are traded and shipped and packaged. But now, see, the laws of the sea are the laws of money, the laws of trade and commerce, that governs how ships and vessels on the oceans operate in accordance with the laws of the other pillar, the laws of the land. Now, the supreme law of the land is the Constitution, which we all know the Constitution. I'm not going to spell that out, but basically, back to my point about the maternity ward. All right, the babies behind the glass that are waiting for their doctor to handle their paperwork, they have not yet been brought under these pillars, under these two pillars. The Masonic system all right, this old Masonic system. Let's draw a square and compass here. This old Masonic system has yet to been placed over these babies, because they have not yet had their footprints stamped on the certificate. When they take the ink and dip your baby's foot in the ink and they press their foot onto the paper of that certificate, they are claiming that because the sole of your foot has not yet touched the land first, but has first touched a certificate, that a paper that represents the laws of the sea, they can claim that your birthright and your soul, your SUL, your soul, has been marked and stamped and attached to the laws of the sea with the certificate that is traded on the stock market, that is used in money and commerce with the banks. So what happens is they then come up with a number called your Social Security number. It's a 9-digit number. It could be 36127103339. That could be your birth certificate number, right? It's a 9-digit number, which is actually a number that is in the millions. It's actually an amount of money that the bank estimates. All right, so up to $9 million are estimated on your birth certificate. And the elites, they place bets on how much debt you will accumulate in your lifetime. If, say, you rack up $2 million of debt with medical bills and utility payments and etc. If they're keeping track record of how much debt you're building up with a corporation known as the U.S., the United States, not the United States of America, not the USA, which is a different thing entirely. We have a country known as America, or the United States of America, and that country is a sovereign entity of its own, which we, the people of the United States, are a part of, but unaware of the sovereignty that we had, which has been stolen from us with this system. So when the banks and these rich bankers, they place bets on how much your debt is going to build up before you die, what they do is they trade the original certificate, the original birth certificate. They trade those receipts because they're worth money. The amount of money that they're worth is on the back of your Social Security card. There are red numbers. There are numbers in red on the back of the card. It's another 9-digit number. So it could be 7, 8, 2, 6, 9, 3, 8, 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It could be that number, right? But it'll be in all red. All the numbers will be red on the back. That number is how much. It's actually a serial number on the back of your birth certificate. If you will call the stock market, which operates in New York, where the first colony was founded in the United States, the first of the 13 colonies was founded. If you call the stock market, which is Wall Street in New York, call their offices and have their telemarketer look up a bond for you. Tell them, I have a bond here, which is essentially a piece of paper that has a serial number on it attached to the stock market, right? All right. And ask them if they will type in that serial number, which is the 9-digit number on the back of your card, that the numbers in red. When they look up those numbers in red in their database, your name, I'm going to use my name for example, your name in all caps will appear on the screen. When they type in that serial number, it will come up in all caps for a reason. But that they will see that on the screen and say, they will tell you that it appears to be a corporation under the title Cody Hinesley, or with the name that's on the screen. All right, the all caps name is a corporation, which is essentially a company that's owned and or traded or bought. It is a corporation. All right, the word corporation comes from the word in Latin corpus. Okay, corpus is where we get the word corpse. A corpse is a dead body. Corpus in Latin means body. It later became the English word corpse, which refers to specifically a dead body. So a corporation is a body of enterprise and trade and commerce. So you are a corp, right? Now, what does this have to do with the money, the banks, and the laws of the land and laws of the sea and the courtrooms we attend today? Well, I'll show you. When the river of the economy flows and the money trickles down, you know, that saying, trickle down economics, you know, the idea that the rich people invest in companies and money trickles down from the upper class to the lower class. They always refer to it in terms of water. They say liquid assets and frozen assets. They say they refer to the economy as a river or a body of water. They always do this because the money channels, okay, it flows between the banks. All right, the big banks. All right, the banks are all owned and managed by the same families. All right, the banks, like the river banks, the banks of a river channel the water out to the sea. So the money, the cash flow, it flows out to sea, and the banks channel that currency. They direct that currency. The banks in America are known as central banks. Central banks are owned by the Rothschilds. Central banks all function and dish out their money and have it printed by a company known as the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve will loan out money, fake money that they print, that's not backed by any actual gold or silver or anything that has value. They just print out monopoly dollars and they give it to Congress whenever they're in debt. But because the government of the United States, the Congress has gone bankrupt, they decided in the 1930s that they would start using their citizens as collateral. They came up with a name in the 1800s. They, instead of calling people human beings or men and women, they decided to say everyone given birth to, everyone who's born is now called a citizen. And there's a reason why. Because a citizen is actually the definition of an employee for a corporation called the U.S. If you are a citizen of the U.S., a United States citizen, that means you are an employee of corporate America. The word citizen does not mean a person born in this country. Whenever a judge asks you, are you a citizen of the United States, he is asking if you're an employee of corporate America. Are you an employee for the company that operates through the banks that I'm working for? That's what he's asking you. Now a judge sits on a bench. He sits on a bench. And he rules from the bench. Now the word bench comes from a Latin phrase that means bank. He sits on a bank. Okay? That's why he doesn't actually care if you're innocent or guilty. That's why when you go to first appearance, the first thing the judge asks you is, are you a United States citizen, and what's your annual salary? How much money do you make per month? He doesn't ask you, all right, now son, so I heard that you got in a fist fight and you were arrested for battery. Can you tell me why you threw your fists and hit that man? Were you operating in self-defense, or were you the aggressor in that situation? He doesn't ask you nothing about the fight that broke out. He asks you about how much money you have, because his main interest is to settle a score for the banks. He's just a referee between you and your attorney. Your attorney, which is called a private attorney. The private attorney and the state's attorney, the lawyers that are working directly for and representing the state. State's attorneys are there to try to provide evidence to the judge. They want to try to bring forth evidence to the judge or the referee. So they come up with evidence to present their case and show the judge that why they think you deserve to pay them, why you deserve to pay them a sum of money so that they can be accommodated for what you damaged or destroyed or what you did that costed them. They want to prove to the judge that you owe them something, whether it be time or whether it be probation, whether it be court fees, etc. Okay, your attorney is there he's supposed to attempt to provide evidence that protects you and shows the judge that you were not the one responsible for their loss. All right. But his main concern is to settle the score for the banks, and that's why they call it a court, because they're playing a ball game by throwing the law back, and they're quoting laws and statutes and throwing them back and forth at each other and pointing out the rights and wrongs of each party. Okay, the ball is going bouncing back and forth in their court, like playing tennis on a court. All right. So, but in this case, the ball is the law that they're tossing back and forth out there. Now, when you go into a courtroom, you have the benches that are in rows. Okay. When you walk in, you have all these benches that are in rows. All right. And they're on each side of the courtroom. Then you have this walkway in between. And then you have a wall or a fence that separates the courtroom, this side where the judge sits up here. The judge is way up here with his hammer and his, all right. And then you have the attorney's bench, which, depending on what kind of courtroom you're in, it differs, but the attorney's benches are actually they're not on this side. They're on the other side. Yeah, because the attorneys have been licensed to pass this bar. This fence is called the bar, and it represents a sandbar. Okay, it also represents the boarding of a ship. When you walk through it, it represents boarding onto a boat. Now, so here's the private attorneys, their desk or their bench where they sit, and here's the state's attorney's desk on the other side of the bar. This is where you stand up to the podium to talk to the judge. You have to cross through this barrier, this fence. Let me move it back a little. Now, they call this the bar, and that's why when you graduate to practice law and can now become a lawyer, you are said to have passed the bar. You passed the test and you took the college courses to receive your license to pass the bar. The people out here that are not lawyers, that are not police officers or judges, ordinary people sit out here that aren't licensed to pass the bar. If they pass the bar anyways without license to sail out in those waters, they're charged a fee. There's a cost, a toll fee. All right, so they're put in debt. Okay, they're put into debt. And the word debt is, if you just make the T a little more subtle, it's like saying the word debt. Dead. They are in debt. They are dead. They are debtors. They're dead people. They're people that have been put in debt. They're dead. They're dead. They're dead. They have been pronounced in debt. Now, in debt to who? The people who own this side of the fence, which that would be the Postmaster General, who operates out of Great Britain, who is also known as the King and Queen, the royal head of England, Great Britain, and also the Roman Vatican. Since the Vatican no longer has emperors, since Rome no longer has emperors, the head of Rome is now the head of the Vatican, so the Pope. So the Pope and the King and Queen of England, Great Britain or whatever, they own the property on the other side of the bar. Most courtrooms, not all courtrooms, but many courtrooms, the other side where the judge is, the courtroom, it ramps down, it drops, so that you go out and it's like you're going into deeper water. Now, on this side of the bar, you're licensed to sail. You're licensed to sail out here, and out here you're allowed to talk, and your freedom of speech applies out here. The Constitution is what rules out here on this side of the courtroom. But when you step through to the other side, it signifies that you have boarded a vessel, now a ship, a boat that is owned by the King and Queen of Great Britain, who issue and manage the banking through the Masons, through the Masonic system. Now, so you become in debt to the banks who are working for the Vatican and the King and Queen of Great Britain. So you are placed in debt and are pronounced a dead man. And dead men do not talk. So your attorney has to be your mouthpiece, and he stands next to you and he talks to the judge up here, and you aren't allowed to speak. But if we have the freedom of speech and the right to say what we want, then why is the judge allowed to have his officers tape your mouth shut with duct tape while you're on the side of the fence? How come they can take your freedom of speech over here? The reason why is because you're no longer in the United States of America over here. You are standing on a piece of land, and that has been bought by a foreign company, a foreign organization, and you've crossed a border outside of the United States of America, essentially. Now, if you will look up the word demon, if you will look up the origins of the word demon, okay, look up the definition of demon, the word demon, and its origins, okay, you will find that Google has at least 5 definitions for it, but the third definition for demon is police officer. Police officer. Why is demon a word for police officer? Because he's a detective man, but they don't spell it like man, they spell it M-O-N, just like demon. So notice that there are officers in the courtroom. You have a police officer here, you have a police officer here, you have a judge right here, and he wears a robe, a black robe that represents Saturn, Satan. He's a dark magician, okay? And he has, instead of a wand, he has a gavel or a hammer. It's just a stick with a thing on the end, but it's basically his wand. Now, his job, the judge is there to not just be a referee, but ultimately he gives a sentence after a verdict is concluded. He sentences somebody under a curse. That is why we write in cursive when we give our signature and we sign a contract. Now his demons, this black magician, the judge, his demons / officers, all right, here's what happens. If you sail out to deeper waters and are pronounced dead, then somebody has to speak for you. And so your attorney is there to act as the medium between you, the dead spirit. You're the dead spirit, or the debt spirit. You're in debt. So the dead man cannot talk, because dead men don't talk. Therefore, the dark magician summons you. That's why when you get a subpoena, you have been summoned to the courtroom to make an appearance. Only spirits make appearances. They don't just show up or arrive. They appear. If you fail to appear, then he will send his demons, his officers, all right? Let's draw those star badge. Okay, he will send his officers, his demons, out to capture you. And they will drag you to jail. Okay, now let's look at how J's are used in Spanish. They're not used. How do we spell Jesus in Spanish? We spell it exactly the same. It's just pronounced different, because J in Spanish is H. So we pronounce Jesus like Jesus. It's the J makes the H sound. So your police officers, the demons, drag you to hell. Or hell. After